I'm keeping it at the homeowner level so that you guys can all go home with tools you can get at Lowe's and do this work. And I'm also talking about maintenance and restoration together. If you're going to restore this window, you want to strip all the paint off of this and pull the glass completely out of this, which we are not going to do today. But just for talking points, when you do that, you'd have electric, which you don't have here today, and you would use a heat gun like this. And before you do any work to a window, you want to wear a mask because there is lead paint in these window sash. We can just assume there's going to be lead paint. And everything we touch today is going to have lead paint. So don't lick your fingers after you touch the windows. When you're pulling glass out of a window, you want to protect the glass because a heat gun will break that glass extremely quick. And we don't want to break beautiful, historic, wavy, wonky glass. And so the best thing that I find as a heat shield is an asbestos shingle, which we all know asbestos is really bad. But when it's in a shingle form like this, it's not friable, and we're not breaking this right now, so this right here is not causing us any harm. And it protects the glass. I mean, you don't get any glass breakage. And so you're going to push your heat shield. And just so you know, this is the kind of shingle that you find on houses when they're like cladded in asbestos shingle. And so if you find a house where they're getting removed, get a couple of these and save them. So if you put the shingle on the glass and you keep it at an angle, don't have it flat down like that, you can take your heat gun when it's on and you can just very carefully go up and down the glazing like this and warm it up. And as you're heating that glazing, it's going to get very soft. And as it softens, you will take a pull scraper like this. And everyone here wants to get a pull scraper. When you're stripping paint or pulling glazing or doing any kind of work, you don't want to use a putty knife, which people oftentimes do. They'll like try to scrape it this way, but that digs into the wood and it raises grain and it's not good. So a pull scraper. Sometimes, I'll be honest, they're kind of hard to find. Big box stores don't usually carry them. So you have to go to like a mom and pop small local hardware store to find them sometimes, or you can find them online. Atlas Preservation is a great website that sells all kinds of products for window restoration. Atlas. And so they will carry pull scrapers. So you can get teardrop shapes and, well, you used to be able to get half moon shapes. This business went out of, this company is no longer making scrapers, or out of business. Trapezoidal, anything you need, you can find a concave. So after your glazing has been softened with your heat gun, you'll then take this and you will very carefully pull it out of there, putting no pressure on the glass. The pressure is all against the rabbet, which is the groove in the wood that the glass sits inside. But today we're not heating it, so we're only going to pull the loose today. But once you had your glass completely pulled out, if you're going to restore this completely, you would then clean up the entire rabbet when the glass is out. Make sure it's all nice and clean. No more glazing is on it. And set your glass aside. But label your glass. Label your glass with, I use masking tape. And the way I do it is, this is actually from another client that I do a little picture, and because this is a 9-pane window, and so it shows me which pane in that window sash that glass actually came from. And I know that it was window number 1. So that's what I label. But you'll clean your glass and then you'll strip your entire window sash of all paint. Same method, but you no longer have to worry about a heat shield because the glass is out. So then you'll take your heat gun and you will very carefully, without scorching the wood, you will go through methodically and heat that paint until it's nice and soft. As it softens, you will scrape with the grain of the wood. Always with the grain, never across the grain.
So just a question. You don't recommend using compounds that will remove the paint?
Like paint stripper?
Mm-hmm. No.
I don't like paint stripper. Paint stripper is a chemical. I don't like to use chemicals. Heat is not really chemically based. Also, paint stripper takes a lot longer. With a heat, you can do this whole entire window sash in a half an hour. With a stripper, you have to put it on, wait overnight, go back to it. And if it's a lot of layers, the stripper takes off one layer at a time, so you're going to do it for days and days. And this gets it all off at once. Also with stripper, if you don't neutralize at the end, and you have any stripper left in the wood, when you go to paint that sash, your paint's going to fail and not stick. Today, we are doing a maintenance, not a restoration, meaning we're not going to pull all the glass out of these windows, and we're not going to remove all the paint. We're only going to scrape off the loose glazing and the loose paint. So on this sash, we'll take a pull scraper, not a putty knife, and we're going to scrape the paint like that with downward pressure with the putty knife, or with the pull scraper. And we'll get it to a level like that. With the glazing, we're going to take our scraper and very carefully, with no pressure on the glass at all, because it'll break very quickly, we're going to just scrape the loose glazing out. If it's not loose, we're going to leave it. So you can see the loose is coming out. This is pretty loose stuff. And doing it in place, you're doing it all on a ladder. It's very difficult. When you're in place also, when you get ready to do the glazing part, we'll go over and we'll learn when you glaze, it's easier to glaze a surface this way. It's hard to glaze upside down when it's trying to fall out of that bottom rabbet. And you'll be...
Heat guns also too, there's many a house that's burned down from heat guns.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you do need to use, they're a fabulous tool, but they do need to be used, and that's why if you have it out,
Exactly.
it's on the table, it's gonna be safe.
Exactly. So yeah, a heat gun is blowing extremely hot air to melt this paint, burn this paint. And so if you're doing it up here, like on this window, we can see this window is full of cobwebs. And all these little holes and cracks in the jamb, behind that is cobwebs. And if that cobweb gets hot enough, it'll burn. If there's sawdust back there, mouse nest, you never know what you're going to find back there. It catches on fire and your house is up in flames.
What if you have a huge window and there's just little windows on top that are broken? Would you still take out the whole huge window?
So are we talking like a Victorian?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm inside. Well, no, I guess it's outside to a porch, but yeah.
Okay. If it's really difficult to remove, then you can do it in place. You can do anything you want in place. It's just more difficult to do it in place.
Do you do that sometimes because you have to?
If it's really big, yeah. I've worked on like storefront windows that are all in place, but I just prefer. Some of these windows out here we're going to pull later. They have caulk being used as glazing, which is not ideal. This right here is more of a more modern day glazing you can see here on this window. So it won't look perfect, when you're doing a maintenance, when you have all these kinds of different weird glazings, but it's not gonna have like a bonding issue. It's all gonna bond together and it'll still hold in well. And then with the glazing, there's all kinds of glazings out there for you to buy. And I'll go over tons of that later. And I have lots of different glazing products in the back. And some are better than others. I find that it's easier when I'm pulling glazing to use two hands. So I have this hand. I'm gonna do it on this one. This hand is putting all of my pressure towards the rabbet. And this hand's kind of like guiding it. And I use my forearms to hold the window sash. And so I'm digging that glazing out. All of my pressure is against nothing's on the glass.
Pulling pretty.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm really pulling, yeah. And when I get down here, I tend to do like a pistol grip with my hand. And so, I mean, here's all cleaned out, but I'll put my thumb here and hold this like this, and I'll actually squeeze really hard to get it all cleaned out because I have more control. When you're working on windows, you really want to have full control over your tool and your body and the sash. And so that's why some guys, they like clamps, and they clamp it to the bench so it doesn't move. And that's great, and some people love it. I personally don't use clamps because I like to be in control of where the sash is. If you lose control, you will gouge the wood, you'll break the glass, gouge yourself. And so it's always about control. So I'm always full control. And so the window is moving around a little bit, but it's moving where I still feel like I have the control of where it's moving. You can see here, this corner, this is actually caulk. It's very rubbery, stretchy. So I always try to get caulk out because caulk is not very good. It's not a good window glazing. Under the glazing, the glass is held in place by glazing points, which are metal. And there are various different styles. So I'll pull some out just to show. In this one here alone, we've got a mass-produced triangular point. We have a mid-19th century push point by Red Devil, which is no longer sold or marketed. This product is no longer available, but they're a very cool product. You will find in windows, what do I have in here? So these are available at a lot of different hardware stores. I personally don't use them because they're not very good, but you'll find them everywhere. These little push points with like little fins, you'll find them at every hardware store you go to. They're terrible. I never use them. I only have them for display purposes. They really are awful. They're bad because every window is different. Every rabbet is different. Earlier windows, the rabbets, because the crown glass is shifting and moving, you can have extremely narrow glazing beds. This is a pretty thick glazing bed. But sometimes those fins will stick up past your glazing bed, and you'll actually see them sticking out of the glazing.
Yeah.
Those little fins.
Oh.
And because the fins stick up, they prevent the point from going further into the window sash. And so the part that's holding the glass sometimes sticks out past your rabbet sight line, which means now they're sticking out that way out of your glazing also. So when you finish your window, you have glazing points sticking out of your glazing, and your glazing knife hits it, and it makes a big bump, and they're terrible. Before they were mass-producing window points, they were just snipping them out with tin snips out of sheet metal. And so sometimes you'll find early points that are just handmade as they went. So when I get glazing points, I always buy the triangular ones because they're really the best. And some hardware stores carry them, local ones, little mom and pop shops, not big box stores, they won't carry them. And Red Devil still makes these, Flexure still makes these, other brands. And on Atlas Preservation online, they carry them also. They also carry these, which are also just the same thing, triangular, but these are meant to go into a gun, a glazing gun. But I also never use a glazing gun or a point driver gun. They're efficient and they're great for working with new glass, but they vibrate, and with very early glass, they can break your glass with the vibration, the shock. I have an old pry bar that I ground off the top, and it's just a flat pushing pry bar.
So it's just flat.
It's just flat.
Oh, okay.
So we ground it off on a grinder wheel. And it was sharp to push on, so I wrapped it in electrical tape for my handle. So it worked perfect. And it's got glazing putty all over it, so all my tools are covered in glazing putty. So you're going to take your point, and you want to lay your point flat on the glass with no angle, just like that. And you want to push just into the wood, not into the glass. If you push into the glass, crack. We don't want to crack. And we're going to just very gently wiggle it up in. We want the point to hold the glass, but not be in the sight line. And when I say sight line, I mean that when you're looking, let's say this is your kitchen, and you're looking out your kitchen, you want to only see wood. You don't want to see a point, or you don't want to see glazing sticking up into the glass part. And so on here, you can see this bottom here. Somebody very crudely glazed it. And you can see all the glazing on the interior surface. Now, from an energy efficiency, that doesn't matter at all. But from an aesthetics view, you don't want to see it when you're drinking your morning coffee. And this is actually a little tack nail for upholstery. People use all kinds of things. They work. They all work. But the nail head sometimes can get in the way of the glazing, so I try to always pull them and replace them with a triangular. So taking it apart is only when the actual wooden parts are rotted, falling apart, joinery is not tight. If it's pretty solid, then the windows don't have to be taken apart ever, really. But when you do a full restoration, so me personally, I would fully restore this window sash. It's pretty gobbed up with paint. So I would, if this was me, I would completely strip this down with heat, pull the glass, sand it all out, and make this look beautiful again. When you do a maintenance, it's always going to have the alligatored paint. So when we're all done with this, it's still going to be rough. Down here, this paint is really goopy. We're not going to get that all off, so at the end, we're going to have goopy paint still. As far as energy efficiency, it doesn't matter. It's only cosmetic. So I think the glazing's all pulled. That's loose. So we'll do the same thing on the paint. And like I said, when you're doing this in your house, wear a mask, because it is lead. I can't wear a mask when I'm teaching because then no one can hear me when I'm talking like this. So when you get to a joint where the stile and the rail meet, like I said before, you don't want to ever pull across the grain. So we're always going with the grain on this way and with the grain this way. But you can't go with the grain at that joint. So you want to always go askew with your scraper, which means you want to go at a 45-degree angle. And that has less chance of tear out. And we don't want wood tear out. Just like that.
Do you sharpen your
I do. So the way that I sharpen most of my scrapers is, it's in my car still, didn't bring it in because we didn't have electricity, but I use a belt sander upside down, and I just set them on top of that carefully as it's going, and I just sand them sharp. This is actually a Warner handle, and I like the feel of this handle by Warner. You can buy these, but the weird thing is we go through blades quickly when you're doing this, and this company, Warner, that makes these, the blades are interchangeable. You can pop them off, put new ones on, but they don't sell the blades by themselves. We actually make my blades here, so this is actually a circular saw blade that we cut with a grinder, and then we belt sand them and make our own blades because we don't want to keep buying more handles. Another great one, and if you go to like yard sales, you'll find all kinds of stuff too. You know, these are pretty old. These are probably, this one here is probably from the 40s, but you'll find this stuff laying around at places. And they still make these triangular scrapers today.
So when would you use the different shapes? Like you showed us, you have a teardrop.
Yeah. So if you're going to work on the interior side of this window sash, the interior side has a profile. So this is all flat. It's just a flat rabbet, flat window stock. But the interior has this carved profile right here. And every window sash is a different profile. So this profile is a late 19th century profile. These window sash, you can see they're a little different of a profile. These are a Colonial Revival profile, so they're like a 19-teens profile-ish. The earlier sash that these replaced were even a more delicate, thinner muntin, really beautiful profile. So when you're scraping the profiles out, you want to use all these different profile scrapers. And you just find the one that you like the best for the application you're doing. So on this one, you could see that this one here would probably be really good for that. It's actually not perfect. So in this case, I would actually tilt my blade. By tilting it, it becomes better to fit that profile with this shaped profile scraper. And then I just very carefully, you don't want to gouge the profile and screw it up, because the window profile is super important. It's not just aesthetics. I mean, it's beautiful and it's beautiful at the end, but the window profiles can help you date a window. And based on the profile, the muntin, you can tell if the window is 1810, 1910. So it's a crucial tool for history detectives. So you don't want to screw that profile up. You don't want to round off things or square off things. Now this has like no paint on it, so we're not going to have to do this, but I'm just showing that this is what you would do. And you want to always get the top of your muntins also, where you have paint built up on those. You can see here as I'm scraping this, I'm getting chatter. You don't want to ever have chatter. So if you look at the actual muntin here, as I scraped it, I have lines where my scraper is actually causing marks in the wood, and that's due to the grain of the wood in that particular section. So if that happens and your scraper is chattering and making those marks, you want to turn your scraper around and go the other direction, and you will eliminate that. So there is the exterior side of this, all scraped from all loose paint and loose glazing. And then if you want this to be fully operational, one of the biggest things with windows that stop them from being operational and moving up and down is paint buildup on the sides. Now these have not been painted in a lot of years, so there's not much paint. But oftentimes on the side, you'll have paint goobers down the sides over here. So you'll want to, very carefully, when you're holding upright, scrape all that stuff off. And it's amazing, windows will not open and close at all. And just by scraping all the goobers off, it works perfectly again.
So if the muntins here, if they're starting to rot and get soft, is there any way to fix that?
So it depends on how bad they are rotting. If they're super bad, if they're super bad, they should be replaced with new muntins, which is a big job. So to replace muntins, you have to get muntin stock milled from a local millwright that is matching the knife profile of your original muntins. Usually you can't buy the knives to match the profile. You have to have a knife made by a custom knife sharpening place. And then you have to, once again, you have to pull the pins. So all of these pins, there's a pin here, there's a pin here, there's a pin here, and there's 2 pins on here under the paint. So you knock all those pins out, you pull your complete window in pieces all apart, but making sure you label every single part.
But there are like the Krogan mill, the island mill, they will actually reproduce sash. If you bring them an original sash, they can reproduce anything for you.
Where are they?
Krogan. Say you did break the glass, you know, because, I mean, all of us who work on windows will inevitably break glass. It's just, it comes with the territory. Where do you, I mean, where's the best source? So like if you're a homeowner and you really want that glass to match or be similar to the historic glass that's in there, where's a source to get that? Just
Salvage.
Salvage old windows?
Yep, salvage is the best. Just find old windows and take the glass out of those and cut them down. I brought this. This is just new glass. It's not old. It's just scrap glass from my shop. And I brought it to actually show people how to cut glass. It's very easy to cut glass. And I didn't bring all my fancy glass cutting stuff, but I have an oil-fed glass cutter, which actually has glass cutting oil in the handle, which is really nice. It lubricates the cutting wheel. But there's other styles that don't have that oil-fed part, and they work just as good. And when you're cutting glass, you always want to lubricate that cutting wheel. So even if you don't have an oil-fed one. And the best way to do it, which they've been doing since the 18th century, 19th century, or 19th century for this method actually, I have a little pill bottle with a little rag of paper towel in it, and I have kerosene in there that's absorbed, and it's been sitting in here for years, and it's still in there. So I just take my thing and I dip it in that kerosene a little bit, and it lubricates it enough to work. You can use a cotton swab or... And then when you're cutting glass, you want to have like a T-square to make this nice, and you want to measure it out. You always measure it to be 1/8 of an inch smaller than your window opening. So we can see here from rabbet to rabbet, the interior dimension of this. This is 10 3/4. So we want to go 1/8 an inch less than that. So we want to be 10 5/8. And that just gives you enough wiggle room. If it's too tight, it's not going to fit perfectly. You're always going to have some little issue. And it's very hard to cut 1/8 an inch off or 1/16 inch off glass. You can do it, but it's hard. So you want a nice, flat, clean surface. And like I said, I didn't bring my T-square, so we're going to just do quick cuts. But you'll measure it out where you want it. Let's say, we want it at 3 inches. So we'll measure out 3 inches. We'll mark it with a Sharpie at where we want it. We'll put our T-square on there, have a nice clean cut, or a nice crisp surface, and we'll take our cutting wheel, and you want to push enough where you actually hear the cutting wheel have a certain sound, and you'll hear it. Like that. And you always want to go the whole way. You don't want to go back and redo it over again because it won't cut good. And then you score it and you snap it. So.
Is it good to have gloves on when you do that?
Yeah, gloves are nice.
Can you do that, or like if you were trying to cut like crown glass, would you break it? Or
It's very hard.
okay.
It's very hard. And you're most likely not going to be cutting crown glass.
Right. I mean, just like if you were trying to replace.
Yeah, if you're going to replace, so crown glass at that time period, it only comes in New York State 2 sizes, New England 3 sizes. It comes in 6x8 in New England. In New York State, it comes in 7x9 or 8x10. So if you're going to replace crown with crown, you're going to get an 8x10 or a 7x9 from a window sash. There's nobody in the world making crown glass. There was a company in Germany making it, and about 15, 20 years ago, the guy died, and now no one's doing it. So the only way to get crown glass is salvage. Crown glass is only pre-1850. After that, it's all cylinder, which is still wonky and wavy and beautiful,
Right, yeah.
just a different kind of wonk. So there's lots of products out there, all different brands. I've used several of them. Yeah, it's all very expensive. But all the good stuff is expensive, but you want the good stuff. You don't ever want to cheap out when you're buying products, especially if you're doing all this work and you're putting 50 man-hours into working on a window. You don't want to save $5 and buy some really cheap product. So this is one of the epoxy products on the market by Abitron called wood epox. And there's 4 parts in this. There's a wood consolidant, which is, here's a small pack. So you start out with this, which is part A and part B, and it's all liquid wood. And you mix it equal parts, 50-50. So 50% this, 50% this. Put it into I use a yogurt cup, and I mix it really rapidly until it's, about like 2 or 3 minutes I mix it really rapidly. And I mix it just with a stick or whatever I have. You want to be very exact with it. You want to be measuring pretty good. The way I do it is I'll take a pill bottle, an old pill bottle, and my friends all save me pill bottles because I go through so many of them. And I'll actually take a Sharpie and I'll actually mark out and measure and say there's a line on my finger and there's another line for my finger. So I always go to my finger width. So I always mark it out like that. Because you want to be exact. If you don't mix it the exact amount, sometimes it won't harden. And I've had that happen before where I do an entire job with epoxy and then come back days later and it's still soft and yucky. So part A, part B, mix it. And then once you have it all mixed, you'll want to take just a cheap throwaway brush. You can use these little chip brushes. If it's a big part, big surface, if it's small, I love these little soldering flux brushes. They work really great. So you can get it all on there. So let's say this had some rot on it, which it doesn't. If it had rot, and we didn't want to do a wood induction, where we talked about earlier, where you cut out all that rot and put a brand new joint in with new wood, you can fill pieces of rot with epoxy. But so you start with the liquid wood. So far on this one, actually, this right here, big knot hole, I would epoxy that if I was doing this restoration. So I'd take my stuff and I'd completely fill all that with this liquid wood and get it all saturated in this. And this liquid wood is a consolidant, so it goes in as almost like a primer to your wood epoxy, and it hardens that wood and it strengthens the wood fibers. If there is rot, you want to dig out all the rot first. Just carve it out of there with a chisel and just get all the loose, punky stuff gone. Once the liquid wood,
Something like that would do with that.
I wouldn't mess with that. It's not too bad. Because it's not really punky. I can't really pull it apart with my finger. But this is actually in pretty good shape. So once your liquid wood is on, then you use this, which is the wood epox, part A, part B. And once again, equal parts, so 50-50. And you want to use gloves with this stuff. You don't want to use your bare hands with it, even though I'm going to right now use bare hands. So it's like Play-Doh. It's like putty. And if you don't mix it 50-50, then it will not harden, so be pretty exact. But you're not going to be able to measure it, so I just ball it like this, and then open this one up and ball that and get 2 equal-sized balls. And they're different colors. One's a lighter color than the other, so as you're mixing them together, you can make sure that the color becomes one uniform color. And then once that is all fully uniform, you'll take that mix together and you will push it into the void, or push it where the rot was and try to rebuild that part of the window. So if this corner was gone, you could push all into that corner and rebuild that corner. And you always want to rebuild it proud, meaning you always want to make it bigger than the actual window itself. And then after it's cured, and typically a day, depends on how big of a void you're filling, then you can come through and you can sand it. This product is great because it's easily sandable and it's very strong. There are other epoxies out there that also work really well. Another one that I use is called West System. And West System, it's more of a liquid, so it's really good when you're filling weather checks and sills, like outside. And you can add filler to it. You can buy their filler that they sell, or you can just use sawdust and mix into there and thicken it up a little bit. But it works good. West System is harder to sand though. So this is super easy to sand, Abitron. West System, you'll be wearing a lot of sandpaper out, sanding down to a flush surface.
And that's easy to paint over.
Oh yeah, you can paint it, you can stain it,
Paint it.
you can prime it. You can do anything you want to it. So they're great products. And this is actually for doing plaster work. And you can buy it at small hardware stores. It's called a plaster crack opener. And it's meant for when you have plaster cracks in your plaster and lath walls, you can dig those cracks a little bit deeper and fatter to be able to repair the cracks. And it's pointed, and it's a perfect tool for this job. So you can get that tool into those cracks, and you're going to be filling all this, so if you gouge it, it's fine. And you're going to dig out all of that paint out of all those cracks. There's rotten wood on here. We'll dig that out using a similar tool. This has caulk in it. We'll dig that caulk out. Yucky caulk. And this right here has also got splinters. You can see it's splintering. It's just falling apart. We don't want those splinters. We'll just pull those all out of there. You can use one of these to get in there and dig. You just want to dig that stuff out of there. You can use a chisel and get it out and actually deepen the cracks if you want, because like I said, anything we deepen, we're going to fill this in with the epoxy. That's how you clean out the cracks of weather checks. And you want to get everything off of the sill before you epoxy it. So all of the paint wants to come out of those. And then you would do the same as we did inside. You would take that, if you're using Abitron's product, you would take the liquid wood, mix it up. You can actually pour it down into these cracks and really fill those. And then take a brush and brush it out and get it really saturated. Let it sit until it gets tacky a little bit, 5 minutes. And then after it's tacky, then you take your fully massaged part A, part B putty wood epox. And you can take a putty knife and you can actually push it down into these cracks to fill these cracks. And when you're using a putty knife, you want to always go askew again. Because if you pull it with the crack this way, you're going to pull it out of that crack. It's not going to really set really well. But if you go at a 45-degree angle, you'll push it into there a little deeper, and it'll stay without coming out. And you'll let it harden for a day or two, and then sand it. And once it's sanded, then you can go back to your priming and painting. If it's colder, it takes longer to cure. If it's hotter, it cures quicker. If you're in a huge rush, you can take a heat gun and heat it and get it to cure even quicker. But it's better to just let things go by nature. There are companies out there still making it, small paint companies. So one paint company is called George Kirby, and they are out of Massachusetts. George Kirby, and they're out of Massachusetts, and they still make it. So you can still buy alkyd oil paint from them and have it shipped to your house. But
What's the brand that you recommended earlier?
So I use Benjamin Moore. I use Benjamin Moore for client work. I'll say that. I don't use it for my own personal work. My own personal work with my personal house, I use linseed oil paint. And linseed oil paint is wonderful stuff. It's what they used historically on this building. So you can see here on this original coat hook, this is linseed oil paint, and it really bonds. You can see here it's really absorbed into the wood. It doesn't peel. That's the original paint color from 1827. And it's still there. It hasn't peeled off. It's wonderful paint. But you can buy linseed oil paint, and there's lots of companies out there making it. I buy it through Artisan, which is the brand name. You can buy it from Allback. It's wonderful stuff.
So is it expensive, or why do you not use it for clients?
So it is expensive. It's about 3 times the cost. So there's a cost issue. And it's a little longer to cure. So it takes sometimes 5 days to dry, which is not bad, because slower to cure, slower to fail. You want that. The issue with linseed oil paint that I don't use for clients is it will mildew if you're not careful. And so the shady side of the house, after you paint, it's an organic compound, and mildew will grow and form on this paint. The sunny side of the house, you'll have no issue at all. But there is that issue. I use Artisan, and Artisan paint has zinc added to it to prevent the mildew, but it's not guaranteed. It still might mildew. So clients don't want to typically have to go off and wash their mildew off their windows yearly. But the way I look at it, I'm painting my own personal house, and it's an 18th century house. In 18th century, the paint mildewed, so it's authentic mildew. When a window looks like this, you're losing a lot of heat. They're rough. But if your window has been fully maintained or restored, and it's in full, there's no missing glazing, it's all painted nice, there's no air going to be blowing through this. And you need a storm window. With the addition of a storm window and a fully maintained window, your windows can be equally energy efficient to a vinyl replacement. There's no difference in energy loss. The way that a vinyl window becomes energy efficient is it has 2 pieces of glass. In between that piece of glass, you have usually argon or something put into there to create energy efficiency. But as we know with insulation, if we're doing like fiberglass insulation, we're packing insulation on our walls, we don't want to dense pack that. We don't push the fiberglass together into a solid mass. The insulation value of fiberglass insulation is the air caught between the fiberglass. And so the same with the window. Air between the glass is the insulation. It's not the actual glass. So if you have a primary window, your original window, with a huge air gap and then a storm window, you're having that air gap. You have your insulation value. So now we are building windows, same technology, and we're using farmed wood. And like we said earlier, farmed pine doesn't last. It's terrible. You get 10 years out of it. So in the 50s, they had this issue. What are we going to do? Our windows are all falling apart. We can't build windows anymore that last. So they start to add preservatives to it. And the preservatives are all causing cancer. So we pull the cancer-causing preservatives out of the wood. We have an issue. What are we going to do? Well, we change to synthetic products. and synthetic products come along, and now we market it as saving you money to make you feel like you need to be guilted into replacing your windows with a plastic thing. I mean, usually you can restore almost anything. I mean, there is a point when you have to just not restore it. When it's like fully just completely toasted, then you have to do something different. But usually you can save almost anything. So when a rabbet is toast, which is when this rabbet here, which is very common, it happens on almost every window, every multi-pane window, this little fillet right here will break off. And it's a very common thing. I do it weekly. You can very carefully cut out that section where it is broken. So you cut out at an angle also. So angle down and then angle this way. And then I take a chisel, a wider chisel than this, my other one's buried, and I chisel out so it's nice and flat and flush to the underside. And then you can just glue new wood into there. So cut a new piece of wood, put it on there. The glass is going to be out of your window by then, hopefully. So you'll glue it with wood glue, and then after it's glued, I use electrical tape because it's a great clamping device. And I wrap tape around that fillet onto the muntin, let it dry for a day, and then come back, cut the tape off, sand all the glue that oozed out, and it's back to perfect again.